Hey, what's up, guys? It's Claudio, and today we have a special episode with my coach, Kyle Perry. We're going to be talking all things recovery, how to get back on the bike after a crash, both physically and mentally, and how to build my fitness back up after pretty much being off the bike for almost 3 weeks and undergoing some pretty invasive surgery. It's Thursdays with Claudio. All right, what's up, everybody? It's Claudio here with Coach Kyle. What's going on, Kyle?
Yo, what's going on? I'm good.
I'm doing well, man. I'm recovering 1 week post-surgery, and wow, it's been quite a trip. It's been quite the physical and emotional ride the last 3 weeks after my crash. It's my first big crash where I broke anything. I've gone down quite a bit in the last 7 years, but this one takes it, you know, a broken bone and surgery. It's I'm gonna feel this one for a minute. So I just want to introduce you, Coach Kyle. We've been together how long? A year and a half or so?
Yeah, that's what I think it's been, a year and a half, maybe a little longer than that. It's been good working. We work together remotely. I'm out of Indianapolis. You're out of New York.
Yes. And so you've gotten to know me for a good season. You've seen me for all the different phases of at least one season. So you kind of have somewhat of a handle on me and what I'm capable of and all this stuff. Well, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background and what do you race and your specialty and any teams that you race in?
Yeah. So this year, I raced for Rainstorm Racing. We're kind of an international squad. We've got guys in Mexico, Colombia, guys out in Colorado, East Coast and South Carolina. So little hodgepodge of dudes from everywhere. We're pretty much a strictly crit only squad. However, a lot of the guys on the team have a lot of focus on track and backgrounds in track racing as well, myself including. But yeah, I've been racing for, let's see, I think I did my first race in it's been a long time, probably 2008. And then that was like a little collegiate category C race on an old friction shifter bike. And then once I got through grad school in 2010, that's when I kind of started picking up cycling after school a little bit more and worked my way up. But yeah, so I've been kind of seriously racing since about 2012, 2013. Got it.
And what's your category?
I'm a Cat 1 on road and track.
Got it.
Yeah, we've got a velodrome here in Indianapolis, Major Taylor. It's about 5 minutes from here. So that's part of some of my weekly training and racing. And so I've got backgrounds, both crit and road. I'll jump into a gravel race, but not super interested in that. Used to do a little cross, kind of the same thing. And then mountain bikes are for strictly fun only.
Got it. Yeah, track and crits. That's exactly why I chose you as my coach, because that's what I'm into.
Yeah.
Very specific kind of training for that. Would you say there's overlap? They go together well?
Yeah, there's definitely overlap. You know, when people start thinking about endurance racing, I think a lot of times guys and gals get too mixed up in like sort of shooting for hours on the bike, but to me it's more about like quality power on the bike. So a lot of shorter intervals that are more powerful, mixed with endurance and stuff, obviously. But yeah, to me it's sort of a lot more neuromuscular VO2 kind of training to be ready for crit racing and track racing.
Yeah. So we've been doing like 10, I think the biggest week I've ever done was maybe 15, 16 hours a week. And that's kind of like what's been working for me and my schedule and as a Cat 3. And I think that we've done a lot with that. I think that the challenge is more consistency, you know, like getting sick or, you know, breaking a bone. And that's kind of like the real setbacks that I've had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, the longer you race, to me, the quicker it is to sort of get back into shape after pausing. So the sort of more accumulated years of riding that you have, the quicker things will turn back around.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's just something that's just part of this scene, really.
I know, right? So tell me about what do you envision for me over the next? So my goal is to be ready for Gateway Cup St. Louis. That's at the end of August. We have
Hmm.
7 weeks.
Yeah.
And I've been off the bike pretty much for 2 weeks, kind of pedaled here and there in between the surgery and when I broke it. But my my training score, whatever CTL, whatever what does that stand for again? Stressed on training peaks.
Oh, your CTL, your training
CTL
load.
training load. That
Yeah.
score, that fitness score is like just plummeted all the way down. So I'm like, oh my god, what can we do?
You're
What can we
peaking right
do?
now. That's what's happening.
Right, right. So how are we going to build me back up? We do have quite a bit of base. I feel like I did some good amount of work over the winter and in Mexico.
Yeah.
How are we going to build
So
myself for 7 weeks from
you
now?
got a ton of endurance when you were down in Mexico. The training
Mm,
hours were good. And again, you had to hit on the like 15 hours a week. That's kind of my typical week is around 15. Sometimes I'll have a couple 20-hour weeks. Sometimes I'll have some 12-hour weeks, especially with a lot of like racing and traveling. But uh, to me, the first sort of week and a half is just going to get you back on the bike and get your muscles firing again. So probably just some simple trainer rides, maybe some endurance ladders with some tempo mixed into them. The first week, and then week two, probably start diving into some threshold. So to me, it's sort of building on your sub threshold for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then in the weeks after that, I'm a big believer in sort of Tabata drills like 30-30s,
yeah.
15 15-30s, a lot of that on off, which is like all crit racing, coming around a corner, resting, accelerating out of a corner, holding that, and then doing the whole thing over again. It to me, it makes riders sharp. It's very in tune with training how you race,
Hmm.
which I'm a believer in. And I think as you get healthier, I know you've got track racing available to you. I think that's something, group rides and track racing to mix in sort of once you're comfortable with that, and once I guess Doc gives you the clear to start riding outside. I think a lot of it now is just going to be managing sort of your eagerness to like get outside and get on the bike. Probably
Hmm.
keeping you on the trainer for as much as you can handle. So doing like more key workouts on the trainer, and then some of those easy days can be outside where you know you're not gonna sort of do something stupid while you're in the red zone. So it's kind of a balance of like keeping you happy by riding outside and then putting the work in inside while you're safe.
Got it. Yeah. And yeah, so what do you think? Knowing me for a year, what would you say is my best bet at getting a podium in like a Cat 3 race? Because
I mean,
I'm still figuring out the kind of rider that I am and like my strengths and like all that stuff.
to me, power wise, you seem like pretty solid across the board. I think um, diving into a little bit more of that sort of 1 minute and 30 second uh, is where we can make some improvements. I think coming off the injury though, it's like to me, it's trying to make you just sharp and well rounded going into this.
Hmm.
I think shot at a podium is there, but I don't think that's going to come from necessarily having the best legs ever. I think that's going to be through conversations about racecraft and strategy and how to sort of race in a manner that suits you, given that you've been off the bike for 2.5 weeks. And
Right.
so having a strategy that is a little conservative going into it rather than like the guy that goes into it saying, I'm going to rip everyone's legs off and ride away from the field. For you, it's going to be, how do I, A, know who I'm riding against? So I know who's the competition, who's good, who's not so good. And then rolling the dice on what to follow and what not to follow. So you can end up in a breakaway on breakaway style courses like the hill, um, or then how to end up in a field sprint, which would be more in tune for day 1 and 2 of Gateway
Right.
Cup. Day 4 is kind of an unknown just because it's not at Benton Park anymore. I believe
Yeah.
it's out in the suburbs of St. Louis now. And I
Mm.
haven't really done the homework to see what that course is like yet, but I have heard that it's got a lot of turns in. I just don't know how necessarily technical that is to know if it's going to favor a break or a field sprint.
Got it. And you got in a break at the hill the third day, right?
Yeah.
Last year.
The ACC day I was in a break with Tanner Ward, current teammate Summerhill,
Mm-hmm.
Will Harden, Travieso, and then there was a kind of a bigger group that bridged up to us near the end. So I
Yeah.
think it kind of swelled up to around 12 guys or something like that.
Nice. What'd you come up with?
I ended up fifth.
Nice.
A couple
That's
guys came
awesome.
around me right at the last second.
I remember, I think you attacked up the hill or somewhere on the last
Yeah,
lap.
yeah. I know clearly where my sprint is. It's not in that sort of peak watt quick sprint out of the corner. So for me, I thought my only chance was sort of going early and staying on the gas harder to sort of eliminate the peak of other guys' sprints.
Yeah. Got it, man. That was a fun one to watch. Congrats with that.
Yeah, thanks.
Are you going back this year to Gateway?
TBD. We've got such a stacked roster that we kind of make team selections within like 2 or 3 weeks of race start. So we've
Got it.
kind of got our schedule worked out through Intelligentsia, and then gonna figure it out after that.
Okay.
It's kind of also hard to decide. Some guys can get injured or sick, so there's some last minute swap outs that tend to happen too.
Right, right.
Hoping to though. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time. I liked that series. That was my first year doing it, and I had fun there.
Yeah, and there's kind of a race for every style of rider. Like day
Right, right.
one is always a field sprint. Day two has gone either way, as well as day three. And then the last day tends to finish in a break or like a reduced group.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like I remember when I first started doing it, I would just sort of kind of do the first race, roll in because I wasn't very good at field sprinting, and then sort of conserve. And then other years, if it was raining, then it's like, all right, we're going full blast to make a break happen on those days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's definitely something for everyone at Gateway Cup.
Yeah, and that's usually my last race of the year. For most people
Yeah.
also.
A lot of people will do that, or they'll continue it 1 week further and go to Bucks County
Mhm.
on the East Coast.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So now the question is, how do I get the crashing trauma out of my head? Because every time I've crashed, I've had at least a little bit of sort of like my race edge is kind of gone for like X amount of time, whether it's like a few days or a week, or, I'm like a little skittish around certain, if it's on a corner that I crash or if I slid out, then I have like no confidence in my bike for a while.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that with maybe you can talk about your crashes.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of crashes. I've had some crashes that have led to bad results. I was fairly close to winning the Amateur Nationals crit. I think in 2017, I was solo on the last lap with maybe a 25-second gap and crashed.
Oh no.
So there's Yeah, you can like find it deep in YouTube. There's a little video on it.
What happened? You were solo and
It's weird. There's a live feed of it, and right as I lost my rear wheel, the feed went black, and then the feed got right back on as I'm sort of regaining control of the bike and headed straight for a barrier.
oh shit.
And hit the barrier. Uh, got back up on the bike with time, thinking like, oh shit, maybe I can get back in this thing, and then realized all the shifters were just like broken off.
Oh,
So that was a DNF day instead of a first place.
jeez.
That for me mentally was probably one of the toughest races to get over. Um, that it like haunted my dreams for probably 3 weeks after that. And my partner Brady, she kind of just pulled up the live feed and we just started watching it again and again. She had heard some podcasts about Olympians just sort of like dealing with that trauma and pressure of failure, and kind of just like owning it and desensitizing yourself from it is a just getting comfortable in it was one of the keys for me to get over that. So I don't know if you've got footage to watch, just like there's a bit of desensitizing you can do mentally to sort of go back and rewatch it and understand what happened.
Mm.
So that's sort of like crashing and something bad happening as a result of that. Then there's like crashing with injury, and um, I've had a couple of concussions, but one really notable one that put me out for probably 6 to 8 months.
Oh my God.
And it's one of those things, especially with a concussion, that you don't necessarily know what's going on at the beginning, and how your healing's going to happen. And then it kind of took a turn for the worse. Um, but I would say I don't know, my advice for people getting over injuries like that, where you're going to have something sort of long term to deal with, is kind of not to look at how do I get back in shape for X race, or like I want to be ready for the beginning of the season of next season or something like that. It's like, how do I make these small goals to take care of myself right now? These sort of micro goals that can help you get to that next season. So with the concussion, I couldn't ride a bike. I was allowed to ride a trainer, but that mentally just, I don't know, because there were so many like stimulation things, I ended up riding a trainer for maybe 20 minutes a day,
Mm.
just with the lights out and all the lights off, blinds down, just to kind of keep stimulation away. But those were like, that was a goal. Like I mentally didn't want to do that. I
Yeah.
would rather like not ride my bike than sit on a trainer in the dark for 20 minutes. But it was like those were my goals at that time. And then once you sort of feel like, okay, I'm ready to like actually start training again, that's when you can start sort of making your plan for, how do I get back to main fitness, and then where do I go from there? Just because it's a long road. Like, I didn't do a power test after all of that time off. I just kind of started riding, wasn't looking at power meters. I was doing a lot of workouts based on perceived effort.
Mm.
That way I wouldn't get discouraged on numbers, but I could tell that I was feeling better over time.
Okay.
Um, so there's kind of ways to trick yourself, and I think a lot of it is like setting micro goals along the way, and then just kind of owning that something's wrong and that you're not going to be 100% for a while. Getting comfortable sort of being in that space is pretty important
Yeah.
to help you deal with it.
Yeah. I like that. I like that approach because I'm like, I'm sitting on the bike for 45 minutes and I feel all kinds of strange things, yesterday that I've never felt. And just like my ribs and my core is different and my
Mm-hmm.
ability to just sit there is it feels like I lost something, and it feels um just very foreign
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah. And I think you know, that foreignness is okay. Uh like you sustain like bodily trauma. You just got through a surgery. Things that normally are loose because you're riding your bike every day are probably tightening back up. As well as just by not being able to stretch and do all this other types of recovery because of a broken bone, that's gonna sort of pull you back. So yeah, you're gonna feel funny for a while.
Mm.
And yeah, for you, some of those little goals just might be like range of motion for certain things. I'm not sure what kind of like physical therapy is involved with surgery after a collarbone. The only broken collarbones I've dealt with are just sort of put the sleeve on and let it heal itself.
Right. Yeah, there's a whole, they referred me to a physical therapist. You know, there's a whole thing apparently. He said it's going to take some time to get like the
Hmm.
full range of motion, up to 2 months maybe.
Yeah. I think some other ways that, you know, I've dealt with other smaller injuries, is just to find other ways to entertain yourself fitness wise or even just mentally. When I had the concussion, I was just downstairs, like restoring old vintage bikes and working on, I mean, it was bike related. I've kind of got like a very sort of creative engineering mindset. So it was nice just kind of tinkering downstairs and getting back into sort of smaller hand-eye coordination.
Hmm.
Um, so it was kind of okay to mentally check out there. But then when it came time to train, it's like just sort of seeing the bigger picture. You know, you started riding a bike with zero fitness and you've gotten to where you're at now. So like 2 weeks off is honestly like no big deal in the scheme of things. I think that's something that a lot of riders do is chase this like big CTL number and then get the sads when that number plummets. You know, I think I've had some of my best rides when my CTL drops 30 to 40 points. And again, that's sort of that like finding this sweet spot of how much is too much to train, and how specific is that training. Um, but it's like you put your body under so much load that sometimes like these forced rest times actually are can be a blessing every now and then.
Right.
Um, Now I don't know if that's going to be the same for you this time or not, but you know, depending on how much fatigue you had in your legs coming into this, like it might not be the worst thing for you either.
Yeah.
Um, you know, typically training blocks are done in 4 weeks, so 3 week build, 1 week rest, where you're kind of at the beginning of you got 2 blocks to get ready for it. So, you know, I honestly think that's like a ton of time to be ready. And especially with the amount of endurance that you've already had and base that you've already put in over the winter.
Yeah. It's exciting. Looking forward to it. Also, like, it's funny when you're off the bike, when you train as much as we do, it's like an everyday thing that we do
Hmm.
almost. And then when it's like gone from your life, even for like a few days, it's like almost like a part of your identity is gone very
Absolutely.
quickly. And that's
Yeah.
like the thing that spiraled me a few times. Like, whoa, what is who am I now? A very
Yeah.
different person.
Um, I kind of hate that aspect of it because it's like slightly more than a hobby. Like it's not like you've altered your lifestyle
Yeah.
around doing this sport and you have to do that to become good at this sport.
Yeah.
Um, it's not something you can just like put away for a couple of days and come back to. Like you have to regularly live in the sport.
Hmm.
So it is, yeah, it is weird when it goes away. For me, it can cause a lot of anxiety, a lot of sort of like built up energy that I'm typically used to being able to expel on the bike. That that can be hard. But yeah, it's like the first few days or first like week can be very uncomfortable, and then you kind of like have to just calm down a little bit and like settle into where you're at with it. Um,
Yeah.
and I think once it's like I don't know, it's like if cycling were a drug, you have to like accept that you were addicted in order to start moving on and becoming re-addicted, I guess.
Yeah, it's been rough just not being able to move, not being able to sweat
Hmm.
for 1 week. That's a very strange feeling, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I mean, I recommend walks. Uh,
yeah.
I did a lot of walks when I had my concussion. Yeah, anything to like, you spend so much time outside, and then when that goes away, you find yourself just sitting around inside a lot. So like, I think getting outside, enjoying nature still. There's obviously like can be a huge social component to cycling.
Hmm.
And I'm a very social person, so when those group rides go away or like travel with your friends or seeing, friends at races goes away, it's like you have to find other ways to sort of socialize yourself.
Yeah. Um, Luckily, I'm kind of a fan of indoor training.
Hmm.
I started cycling the week I started cycling, I got my bike. I also got a trainer. So the two, like cycling and indoor trainer, for me is it's kind of like that's the life.
Yeah.
So that is not an obstacle. I actually really kind of dig it, and especially the longer rides. But I really got into when I was in Mexico. I got into just riding outside in the wild, and it's
Hmm.
like I got a real taste of that.
Yeah, that's what I'm totally into is like unplanned just riding on those endurance days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came from an opposite place of cycling, like didn't own a trainer, bought a Schwinn Varsity from Goodwill, rode it around the class and like down a greenway and back. And I
Yeah.
don't think I had a trainer for maybe the first 4 years of
Oh
riding a
wow.
bike. Yeah,
Yeah. Very different.
I'm very anti-trainer. I wish I loved it more, but yeah.
Something about also New York. It's like for me to get to a place where I can ride long, it's either an hour of junk miles through the city, which is I can't
Hmm.
stand that, or like 30 minutes also through traffic, and it's just like it's
Yeah.
so
I mean, that
efficient,
totally makes sense given
you
your
know.
location.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess where I started was in college in a small town, and I think I could find farm roads within 5 minutes. So it was like
Amazing.
not part of, yeah, trainers were not part of that culture till the snow started hitting.
Right, right. And then so when the winter comes, you're an indoor guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I won't do it. When I was in Muncie, uh, this is where Ball State was at. I had a couple guys that we would just like take turns bringing our trainer over to each other's garages and on the weekends and doing like 3 and 4 hour rides on the trainer.
Got it.
And then fortunately in Indianapolis, where I'm at now, there are like indoor training studios that were built around, oh, what are those things? Can't remember the name. It's like the first smart trainer that's CompuTrainers. They were CompuTrainer
Okay.
studios.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and those were awesome in the winter just because you still had like that sense of community with the group rides, but everyone was just kind of like sweating along inside.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of blasted with COVID. So that's
Yeah.
like one of those things that kind of didn't come back as much as people thought it would. At least for me, I kind of got out of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I got a lot of my indoor miles in with other people, um, which was helpful.
Right.
But yeah, and then I mean, the last question you asked was kind of pertaining to like cornering and stuff, right? Like, do you feel like you have hesitation after
Yes.
crashes?
Yeah, in the technical sections or like close to people or in the corners, how do you navigate that?
I don't know, offhand, like the one thing that I try to think about sometimes is if I'm getting gapped in a turn, the guy in front of me is going faster than I just did. There should be no reason why I can't go that fast. So
Yeah.
I'm the one hesitating. In the next corner, like I'm consciously thinking about not using my brakes. I'm consciously thinking about like coasting down to whatever speed I need and then trying to roll through that corner with as much speed as possible.
Hmm.
It's one of those things I feel like maybe I actively have to tell myself to overcome it. So it's you're getting gapped a couple times and then you just have to tell yourself to take the turn faster next time. I don't know. That's not
I've done that.
it seems simple, but I feel like the more I've crashed and over the years, it's one of those things that it just happens enough every year to where you just get back on the bike. And a lot of times it's just like nothing happened.
Hmm.
Like the cornering doesn't change a whole lot. Um, I think coming back from the concussion, riding as close to wheels as I used to do took a while to get back to
Okay.
and having that comfort level. But I mean, honestly, like your crash was no fault of cornering or pack
Right.
skill ability.
Yeah.
It was just a guy with his head down, just plowing through you from behind when he shouldn't have been. But yeah, I think that sort of nervousness the first time you start racing and you sort of key into a race where you're not thinking about like protecting your collarbone. It's like once you hit that state of like being focused into that race, all that other stuff will just kind of disappear.
Hmm.
And then you just kind of go into like race mode, which is, I mean, you're consciously making decisions, but it's like, I don't know, you're just kind of keyed in at that point.
Right. Yeah, I remember sometimes it's just really when you're lining up, you're getting in your head too much. But once the whistle blows, I remember it's just you're back into that your instincts of
Yeah,
racing,
instincts. That's the better way to put it. Yeah.
race mode, racing, and then muscle memory and everything,
Yeah.
all that
Just
stuff.
searching for that efficiency, not touching the brakes as much as you can. And like rolling into wheels coming out of the turns to be able to stay in the draft. At some point, it'll just click for you, and it might click right away. There's a chance you'll probably, like I know when I had some collarbone and shoulder issues, like there were some races I did where I just really wasn't comfortable getting out of the saddle, just because
Hmm.
of the pain of like tugging on the bars. So you can like modify the style of racing that you do a little bit. It made me ride more efficient. And then it was like gear selection of spinning out of corners up to speed versus just kind of like getting out of the saddle and mashing the pedals can create some like, I don't know, better, more efficient techniques to race too.
Right. Yeah, interesting. I think about that. Yeah, it's gonna be a journey. I think maybe my first races back will be like some track racing,
Mm-hmm.
which is ironically I have crashed in the track and overlapping situations, but I hope none of that mental trauma comes back. It
I
shouldn't.
mean, to me, track racing is one of the safer forms of racing. It blows my mind how scared people are of it because
Right.
there's no brakes, but because there's no brakes, you can't get brake checked.
Yeah.
Uh, your speed is very smooth and consistent and sort of um, predictable.
Hmm.
So then it's just predicting the movements of the riders versus just having to predict that plus speed on top of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm all for track racing being some of the first stuff into it. I would probably venture to say for you, track racing is going to be safer than doing a group ride or something.
Hmm. Yeah. I got a couple of track days and then let's see if I can do some group riding and then that's it. We're jumping into that race. If I feel good and ready to go.
And then, so for you, do you have any other crits before that you can sort of test? Anything on the East Coast?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to search for it because it would be nice to get something.
Within like 2 weeks of the race, it would be nice to have something get rid of those like fear sensations before you get to Gateway Cup.
Yeah.
Not that like day one is a good race to just get into the flow because it's a predictable all left hands, super wide open, as
Right.
much space as you want. But yeah, if you can shake some of that off before Gateway, that would definitely be helpful.
Exactly. Yeah, let's see what I can get into. But I'm excited to just rebuild and have a good time and just enjoy the sport. You know, it's not like it's an amateur level cat 3. It's, I don't need to kill myself over this stuff. And at the end of the day, it's supposed to be just a fun, good time for me,
Yeah,
So
totally.
so just enjoying that process, enjoying the rehab and watching myself get stronger and building up to that.
Yeah. And we'll yeah, 7 weeks to race day is a ton of time in my eyes. So we'll have
Okay.
you going.
Amazing. Great. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for your coaching
Yeah.
the past year and a half. I'm looking forward to more of this build and season after season. Let's see what we can do here.
Cool. Sounds good. No problem.
All right, Kyle. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Talk to
Catch
you
you
later.
later.
Bye.